You expect me to trust that thing? His voice was low, gravelly, laced with exhaustion that went bone deep. He gestured with his chin towards a shimmering, organic pod pulsing faintly in the corner of the cargo hold. It wasn't large, barely bigger than a coffin, but it felt vast, filled with a strange, resonant energy that made the hairs on his arms stand up. The smuggler, a wiry type named Dex with eyes that never settled, just shrugged, adjusting the worn strap of a blaster across his chest. It's cargo, Kale. Expensive cargo. You just gotta keep it stable until we hit Port Obscura. Gets you twice the take. Kale ran a hand over the rough plating of the ship's hull, the metal cool against his calloused fingers. Twice the take. It was enough to fix the atmospheric processors on his old rig, maybe even buy some decent fuel for once instead of skimming dregs from abandoned stations. But something about the pod felt wrong, alive in a way cargo wasn't supposed to be. A faint, internal light pulsed within the translucent walls of the pod, a deep, calming blue that seemed to hum against his own pulse. What is it? He pressed, ignoring the tightening in his gut. Dex snorted, a harsh, dry sound. Package says biological asset. Interspecies research. High SEC transport protocol. Don't ask questions you don't want the answers to, Kale. Just fly the damn ship. Kale's gaze lingered on the pulsing blue light. Interspecies research. That usually meant something ugly, something caged. His past tasted like rust and betrayal, and he had no stomach for contributing to someone else's cruelty. But survival was a harsh master, and his ship was dying slowly. He just had to fly the leg, deliver the package, and try not to think about the potential horrors locked inside that glowing prison. He turned back to the cockpit, the silence of the cargo bay amplifying the rhythmic pulse of the pod behind him. It felt like being watched not with eyes, but with something deeper, something that resonated in the very air around him. He shook his head, dismissing the thought as fatigue. Just cargo. Expensive, unsettling cargo. He needed to focus on the flight plan, the tricky navigation through the asteroid field they were approaching. He didn't need distractions, especially not ones that felt like a caged heartbeat echoing his own. The ship groaned around him as he moved forward, the metal protesting slightly under his worn boots. He could feel the cold seeping in from the outer hull, a constant reminder of the void outside and the fragility of the bubble he flew in. He reached the ladder leading up to the cockpit, his hand automatically finding the worn rungs. As he ascended, a faint, almost imperceptible shift occurred in the cargo bay below. The blue light within the pod flared brighter for just a moment, a silent, internal sigh that Kale, preoccupied with the climb and the looming navigation hazards, didn't notice. He reached the cockpit hatch and pulled himself through, the familiar controls and dim lighting a welcome comfort after the eerie quiet of the cargo bay. He strapped himself into the pilot's chair, his hands moving instinctively over the console. The ship hummed to life beneath him, a far more comforting sound than the silent pulse of the pod. He checked the NAV charts, plotted his course through the treacherous asteroid field, and engaged the thrusters. The ship lurched forward, and he was alone again, just him, the silent stars outside, and the unsettling presence in the cargo bay below, a mystery he couldn't afford to unravel. Not yet. The ship shuddered violently, alarms blaring. Not asteroids. They were clear of the field. This was internal. He fought the controls, but the vessel pitched and spun like a broken toy. A sickening crunch echoed from below, followed by the hiss of escaping atmosphere. The cargo bay. Whatever was in that pod, it was out, and it was tearing his ship apart. The cockpit sealed itself with a heavy clang, a desperate measure to save the core systems, leaving him isolated. Panic clawed at him, cold and sharp. He scrambled to the internal comms, his fingers fumbling with the activation sequence. Dex, what the hell is happening? Only static answered. The smuggler must have been in the cargo bay when it breached. Or worse, the thing that breached it got him. He swallowed hard, the taste of fear bitter on his tongue. The ship stabilized slightly, but the alarms continued their frantic wail. He accessed the internal sensors of the cargo bay, his breath catching in his throat. The pod was shattered, jagged pieces of the organic material scattered across the deck. And standing amidst the wreckage, bathed in the emergency red light, was a shape that wasn't human and wasn't cargo. It was tall, slender, with multiple limbs that ended in delicate, glowing digits. Its form seemed to flow, shifting subtly in the dim light, and from strategic points on its body, a soft internal bioluminescence pulsed, a mesmerizing pattern of blues and greens at war with the frantic red of the alarms. As he watched, one of its upper limbs reached out, touching a ruptured pipe that was spewing frozen atmosphere. The pipe seemed to mend, the hiss quieting to trickle, then stopping altogether. His mind reeled, not just released, but capable, dangerous. He gripped the controls, his knuckles white. He had to get the ship under control, had to understand what he was dealing with. A soft chime sounded from the internal comms. It wasn't static this time. It was a series of complex tones, melodic yet sharp, unlike any language he'd ever heard. The alien, it was trying to communicate. He hesitated, fear warring with a strange, compelling curiosity. It had broken free, destroyed part of the ship, maybe killed decks, but it had also just fixed a ruptured pipe. He keyed the comms, his voice hoarse. What do you want? The melodic tones repeated, more insistent this time, followed by a visual feed request on the comm screen. He stared at the request, his hand hovering over the accept button. Was it a trap, or was it chance? A chance to understand, maybe even negotiate. He needed his ship, and right now, the being in his cargo bay seemed to hold the keys to its survival. He took a deep breath and hit the button. The comm screen flickered to life, showing a close-up view of the alien's upper torso and head-like structure. Its form was graceful, alien, but its posture conveyed something akin to urgency. Its bioluminescent markings pulsed faster now, a kaleidoscope of shifting colors that seemed to convey emotion as much as communication. He couldn't understand the tones, couldn't decipher the light patterns, but he could see the intensity in its multiple, large, dark eyes that seemed to bore right through the screen, right through him. One of its delicate, glowing digits touched the comm screen, and the melodic tones repeated, clearer this time, layered with a faint, high-pitched resonance that made his teeth ache. It needed something from him. He had to figure out what. He looked around the cockpit, his eyes darting over the console, searching for anything that might help him bridge the gap. Universal Translator was offline, damaged in the initial breach. Sensors were giving him limited data on the alien's physiology, dense, resilient tissue, unusual energy signature. Nothing that told him how to talk to it. He leaned closer to the screen, trying to project calmness, non-aggression. I don't understand you, he said slowly, clearly, hoping the intonation might convey his meaning. The alien's bioluminescent markings flared, a frustrated crimson mixing with the blues and greens. It let out a sharp series of clicks and whistles, then pointed a digit at the screen, specifically at his own face. Then it pointed a digit at itself. Then it pointed at the ship's internal layout schematic, which was showing the damaged cargo bay. He watched, his mind racing, try to interpret the alien pantomime. It was indicating itself, indicating him, and indicating the ship. It needed something from him, related to the ship, and maybe related to being together on the ship. The alien's head tilted slightly, its multiple eyes seeming to focus on his reaction. The silence stretched, broken only by the ship's dying groans and the alien's intermittent melodic vocalizations. He had a feeling this encounter was about to become far more complicated than a simple delivery. The alien in his cargo bay was surprisingly quiet. After the initial chaos and the cryptic comm screen interaction, it had settled near the shattered pod, its bioluminescent markings pulsing with a softer, less urgent rhythm. Kale, still locked in the cockpit, monitored it through the internal sensors, the image on his screen a constant, unsettling presence. He'd managed to stabilize the ship enough to limp toward a nearby derelict station, hoping to find parts, or, failing that, just a place to sit and figure things out without tumbling through space. The journey was slow, agonizingly so, every minor tremor from the damaged sections sending a jolt of fear through him. He needed to get into the cargo bay, assess the damage, and more importantly, assess the alien. Was it hostile? Was it trapped too? He couldn't stay sealed in the cockpit forever. He keyed the internal comms again, sending a simple audio signal, a low, non-threatening tone. The alien responded with its melodic clicks and whistles, its bioluminescence flaring in response. It clearly knew he was there, knew he was communicating. How to bridge the gap? He thought about the universal translator, fried. What else? He remembered old salvage tricks, using simple gestures and objects. He needed to see it face to face, or as close as he could get. He unsealed the cockpit door. The rush of stale air welcomed change. He grabbed a multi-tool and a spare power cell. Offerings, maybe? Or just necessities he needed to access the damaged areas. He descended the ladder carefully, his senses on high alert. The cargo bay was a mess. Wreckage everywhere. The air thin and cold near the ruptured sections. And there it was, standing perfectly still near the remnants of its prison. Its floor was more defined up close, the bioluminescent patterns intricate, shifting like underwater currents. He could feel a faint vibration in the air around it, a low thrumming that seemed to emanate from its body. As he stepped onto the cargo bay deck, the alien's multiple eyes fixed on him. Its bioluminescence flared instantly, a vibrant mix of greens and blues, laced with streaks of what looked like curiosity. It didn't move, didn't threaten, just watched. He stopped several meters away, holding up his empty hands to show he wasn't armed. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. He pointed to himself. "Ko." The alien tilted its head again, the movement fluid, almost boneless. It made a soft clicking sound, then a series of melodic tones. He pointed to it. "You." The alien's bioluminescence pulsed, and it reached out one of its glowing digits, pointing at itself. Then a single, resonant tone escaped it, clear and sharp amidst the others. It was a sound he couldn't replicate, deep and musical at the same time. Was that its name? Or part of it? He tried to mimic the closest he could get with his voice, a low hum followed by a sharp consonant. The alien's bioluminescence shifted, streaks of amusement mixing with the blues and greens. It repeated the sound, clearer this time, seeming to emphasize a particular pitch. He tried again, focusing on the resonance. He got closer this time. The alien emitted another complex series of tones, but this time they seemed less urgent, more conversational. It pointed at the damaged hull plating, then at his multi-tool. It clearly understood what was happening to the ship. It wanted to help. The realization hit him with the force of a physical blow. This wasn't just a creature that had broken free. It was intelligent, communicative, and willing to cooperate. Maybe. He approached slowly, holding out the multi-tool. "You fix." He gestured towards the damaged hull. The alien watched his movements, its head tilted. It reached out a delicate, glowing digit, its tip brushing lightly against the metal of the multi-tool. A faint spark of bioluminescent energy seemed to transfer, and the multi-tool hummed differently in his hand, feeling charged. He looked from the tool to the alien, confusion and a fresh wave of awe washing over him. It hadn't just understood him. It had somehow enhanced his tool. This was unlike anything he had ever encountered. The alien made a soft, resonant sound, and its bioluminescence pulsed a calm, deep blue. It felt like a question, a confirmation. He nodded slowly, his gaze locked on its alien form, the shifting light of its body reflecting in his eyes. He had come down here expecting danger, maybe even a fight. Instead, he found partner, a helper. The situation had just become significantly more complicated and far more fascinating. Working alongside the alien was a strange, silent dance. Kale would point to a damaged section, explain what needed to be done using gestures and simple words, and the alien would respond with its melodic tones and shifting bioluminescence. But its assistance was far more than just pointing or simple cooperation. When he needed to access a tight space, its slender, flexible limbs would reach in, guided by an uncanny precision. When he needed to splice a damaged cable, its glowing digits would emit a focused energy, fusing the wires with a speed and efficiency his tools couldn't match. It wasn't just physical help. It was almost like it understood the ship's systems on an intuitive level, a resonance with the technology that bypassed the need for shared language. Its bioluminescence became his guide in the dim cargo bay, the pattern shifting from deep focus, a steady, intense green, to gentle encouragement, soft, pulsing blues, to what he was beginning to recognize as impatience or frustration, sharp, flickering crimson. They worked for hours, the silence broken only by the hum of his tools, the ship's settling groans, and the alien's resonant vocalizations. He learned to read its moods by the color and intensity of its glow, a silent, visual language that was building a fragile bridge between them. There was no awkwardness, no tension in their physical closeness as they worked side by side on repairs. It felt natural. Its alien form, initially unsettling, now felt less threatening, more present. He found himself watching the intricate dance of light across its body, mesmerized by the way it shifted and flowed. At one point, while they were working on a particularly stubborn panel, their limbs brushed, his human skin against its cool, smooth, strangely resilient form. A jolt went through him, not of fear, but of pure sensory overload. It felt alive in a way he couldn't describe, and the brush of contact sent a wave of heightened sensation through his arm. The alien paused, its bioluminescence flaring briefly with what looked like surprise, then settling into a softer, warmer glow. It made a low, resonant hum that seemed to vibrate through the deck plates. It felt less like a sound and more like a feeling, a gentle inquiry. He pulled his hand back quickly, heat rising in his face. "Sorry," he mumbled, even though he knew it wouldn't understand the word. The alien didn't seem offended. Instead, its bioluminescence shifted again, streaks of golden light appearing within the blue and green, a pattern he hadn't seen before. It tilted its head, its multifaceted eyes seeming to study him with newfound intensity. The air around it seemed to hum louder, and he felt a strange tingling sensation deep within his chest. He couldn't explain it, but the brief physical contact had shifted something between them, adding a layer of awareness that hadn't been there before. He returned to the repairs, focusing intensely on the task, acutely aware of the alien's presence beside him, the rhythmic pulse of its light, the subtle vibration it emitted. The cargo bay, once a place of fear and uncertainty, now felt charged with a different kind of energy, an unspoken connection forming in the shared task of survival. The ship was still far from fixed, the derelict station still a distant point on the NAV chart, but for the first time since the breach, Cale felt a flicker of hope. And it wasn't just because the ship was being repaired. It was because he wasn't alone anymore. He stole a glance at the alien. It was focused on the repair, its glowing digits manipulating a delicate wire, but he could see the golden streak still present in its bioluminescence, a silent, beautiful testament to the unexpected connection forged in the heart of chaos. They reached the derelict station, a hulking, skeletal structure hanging silent in the void. Docking was a tense affair, the ship still wounded, Cale relying on the alien's uncanny sense for structural integrity to guide his maneuvers. It stood beside him in the cockpit, its presence a quiet anchor, its bioluminescence a soft glow in the dim space. It wasn't just helping with repairs. It was assisting with navigation, its awareness of the ship extending beyond the physical hull. Its multifaceted eyes seemed to take in the data streams from the sensors directly, interpreting complex information faster than he could read it off the screen. Once docked, the immediate danger lessened, replaced by the daunting task of finding parts and making more extensive repairs. The station was old, abandoned, its corridors choked with dust and the ghosts of those who had once inhabited it. They stepped out of the ship, the air recycler on the station, providing a thin, metallic-smelling atmosphere. Cale carried a heavy-duty cutter and a scanner. The alien followed, its movements silent and graceful, its bioluminescence providing the only light in the gloom of the station's hangar bay. "Okay," Cale said, his voice echoing slightly. "We need power couplings. Maybe a primary buffer panel." He gestured vaguely down a dark corridor. The alien made a low, inquisitive sound. He pointed to the scanner. "This fine stuff." He activated it, the beam sweeping across the grimy floor and walls. The alien watched, then extended a glowing digit, touching the scanner. Again, that faint transfer of energy, and the scanner's display sharpened, highlighting hidden conduits and power lines within the station walls that his basic skin hadn't detected. Its assistance was invaluable. They moved through the station together, a strange pair in the silent, decaying corridors. He navigated the physical space, identifying potential sources of parts, while the alien used its unique abilities to sense the station's remaining energy signatures and structural weaknesses, guiding them to the most promising areas. The silence between them wasn't awkward. It was filled with a different kind of communication. Shared focus, mutual reliance. He found himself relaxing in its presence, the initial fear replaced by a growing sense of camaraderie. There was a moment, as they were scavenging parts from a control room, when Kale stumbled over a loose grate, his leg catching painfully. He swore under his breath, clutching his shin. The alien was instantly beside him, its bioluminescence flaring with concern. A vivid yellow this time, a color he hadn't seen before. It made a soft, rapid clicking sound and extended a glowing digit towards his injured leg. He flinched, expecting a shock or something worse. But the digit merely hovered above his skin, emitting a soft, warm light. The pain in his shin immediately lessened, the throbbing fading to a dull ache, then disappearing entirely. He stared at his leg, then at the alien, his jaw slack. "You can heal?" The alien retracted its digit, the yellow light fading, replaced by a calm blue. It made a series of melodic tones that felt gentle. It tilted its head, its multiple eyes seeming to hold a depth of understanding he couldn't fathom. Healing. Enhanced tools. Intuitive tech sense. This wasn't just an alien. It was something far more complex, more powerful. He looked around the dusty, silent station, the scavenged parts in his hands suddenly feeling less important. He was stranded in the void with a being capable of things that defied his understanding, a being that had been caged and transported as interspecies research. A chill went down his spine. Who had been trying to capture it? What did they want with its abilities? The danger hadn't ended when it escaped the pod. It had just changed form. The alien made a soft sound, touching his arm lightly with a glowing digit. Its bioluminescence shifted to a reassuring blue. It seemed to sense his fear, his sudden unease. In that moment, standing in the silent heart of the dead station, he felt a profound connection to this alien being who had, in the span of a few hours, become his unlikely companion, his rescuer, and a source of unending mystery. He reached out hesitant, and gently touched its limb in return. Its form felt smooth, cool, alien, yet strangely comforting. The bioluminescence on its limb pulsed warmly under his touch, a silent affirmation of their shared vulnerability and growing bond. They spent several days on the derelict station, repairing the ship piece by piece. Their partnership deepened with each passing hour. Kale learned more of the alien's nonverbal language. The subtle shifts in posture, the intensity and color changes of its bioluminescence, the varied resonance of its tones. He discovered that a rapid, high-pitched clicking meant it was analyzing complex data. A low, steady hum indicated focus, and a soft, rapid pulse of warm orange meant contentment or relief. He began to associate different shades of blue with curiosity or calmness, green with concentration, yellow with healing or comfort, and crimson with agitation or warning. He still didn't know its name, couldn't pronounce the resonant tone it had offered. But they had developed a rhythm, a silent communication built on shared need and growing trust. They worked in comfortable silence, punctuated by Kale's muttered explanations and the alien's melodic responses. He found himself talking to it naturally, narrating his actions, explaining the ship's systems, telling it small, mundane details about his life as a solitary salvage pilot. It wouldn't understand the words, but it seemed to understand the intent, the human need for connection. One evening, while taking a break in the ship's small galley, eating ration bars, Kale looked at the alien. It wasn't eating, its species apparently not requiring sustenance in the same way. Its bioluminescence was a soft, ambient blue, filling the small space with a calming light. "So," Kale said, breaking the quiet, "you were in that pod, back on that other ship. Why?" The alien tilted its head, its eyes focusing on him. He knew it wouldn't understand the words, but he felt compelled to ask. He pointed to where the pod had been, then made a gesture of being trapped. The alien's bioluminescence shifted, a faint wave of purple washing through the blue. Sadness? Resignation? It made a series of low, mournful tones, then extended a glowing digit and drew a complex symbol on the dusty galley table. The symbol pulsed with faint, internal light for a moment before fading. It looked like a stylized representation of its own form, surrounded by jagged lines and contained within a harsh, angular shape. A cage. It was showing him it had been captured. He nodded slowly, a knot forming in his stomach. Who did this to you? He gestured outwards into the void, then made a grasping motion. The alien's bioluminescence flared crimson for a moment, sharp and angry. It made a series of harsh, grating sounds, unlike the melodic tones he had heard before. Then, with another glowing digit, it drew a symbol next to the cage, a jagged, metallic shape, cold and impersonal. Not a species symbol, but a symbol of what? A corporation? A faction? He didn't know. But the anger in its bioluminescence, the harshness of its sounds, spoke volumes. It had been captured by something cruel and powerful. And interspecies research was just a sterile name for torture or exploitation. He looked at the alien, at its graceful, luminous form, capable of healing, enhancing, sensing things he couldn't. And he thought of it trapped in that pod, destined for dissection or experimentation. A fierce, protective instinct surged through him, surprising in its intensity. He hadn't felt this way about anyone in a long time. He reached across the small table and gently touched its limb again. "You're safe now," he said softly. "With me, you're safe." The alien looked at his hand on its limb, then met his gaze with its multiple eyes. Its bioluminescence softened, the crimson fading completely, replaced by a warm, gentle orange that spread through its entire form. It made a low, resonant hum, filled with a depth of emotion he was beginning to recognize. Trust, perhaps, or something even more profound. In the quiet of the galley, surrounded by the silence of the dead station and the hum of his slowly recovering ship, the connection between them solidified, no longer just a partnership for survival, but something deeper, warmer, and infinitely more complex. He didn't know what the future held, or who was looking for the alien, but he knew one thing. He wouldn't let them take it again. The ship was functional again, cobbled together with scavenged parts and the alien's uncanny assistance. They prepared to leave the derelict station, the silence of the place suddenly feeling heavy, oppressive, as Kale checked the ship's systems. The alien stood near the main hatch, its bioluminescence a low, steady blue. There was a new kind of tension in the air, different from the fear and uncertainty of their initial encounter or the comfortable rhythm of their repairs. It was the tension of the unknown, the unspoken question of what came next. Kale finished his checks and turned to the alien. "All right," he said, running a hand through his hair. "We're good to go. But where do we go?" The alien turned its head, its multiple eyes seeming to gaze out at the swirling starfield visible through the hangar bay doors. It made a series of melodic tones, its bioluminescence shifting through blues and greens, then settled on a soft, warm purple, a color he associated with introspection or perhaps longing. It extended a glowing digit and drew a complex series of symbols on the dusty floor. Not the cage this time. These were flowing, organic shapes, interconnected, intricate, punctuated by glowing points. They looked like a map, a celestial chart. It pointed to one glowing point on the map, then touched its own chest. It was indicating a destination, its home, a place it needed to go. He looked at the intricate pattern on the floor, then back at the alien. Its bioluminescence had settled into a pleading, hopeful shade of blue. He knew he should say no. Taking a being like this across potentially hostile space was insane. He had his own problems, his own need to lie low, avoid attention. Delivering this alien was what started the whole mess. But looking at the hope in its luminous form, remembering its capabilities, the way it healed him, helped him, the connection they had forged, he couldn't refuse. "Okay," he said softly. "Okay, show me." He crouched down, pulling out his own NAV computer, a basic model but functional. He pointed to the alien's drawing, then to his computer. "Can you put it here?" The alien seemed to understand. It extended a glowing digit, touching the surface of his NAV computer. A faint hum emanated from the device, and the alien's bioluminescence flared intensely for a moment, a brilliant white light that made him look away. When he looked back, the intricate, glowing map the alien had drawn on the floor was now etched, faintly glowing, onto the screen of his NAV computer. A direct data transfer? Through touch and bioluminescence? His mind reeled again at the alien's abilities. The map was complex, showing routes through sectors he didn't recognize, highlighting dangerous areas and safe zones with different colored symbols. It was a roadmap home. He stood up, clipping the NAV computer to his belt. "All right," he said, a sense of purpose hardening his resolve. "Let's go. Let's get you home." The alien's bioluminescence erupted in a dazzling display of bright, joyful yellows and oranges, accompanied by a cascade of rapid, melodic tones that filled the hangar bay. It felt like laughter, like pure, unadulterated happiness. It was the most expressive he had seen it, and the sight and sound sent a warmth through him that chased away the last vestiges of his fear. He had been drifting, surviving, alone for so long. Now, he had a direction, a purpose, and an extraordinary companion. They walked towards the ship's hatch, the alien's luminous form a beacon in the dark, silent station. He didn't know the dangers that lay ahead, who was looking for it, or what its home world would be like. But for the first time in a long time, he felt like he was heading somewhere, not just running away. As they entered the ship, the alien paused, turning back to face him. Its bioluminescence shifted to a deep, intense blue, the color he associated with deep emotion. It reached out a glowing digit, touching his cheek lightly. The touch was soft, warm, sending a jolt of sensory awareness through him. It made a soft, resonant sound, the tone it had given him before, its name or part of it. He met its multiple eyes, feeling the weight of its alien gaze, the unspoken gratitude and trust flowing between them. He didn't pull away this time. He leaned into the touch, closed his eyes for a brief moment, accepting the profound, alien connection that had irrevocably changed his solitary existence. He was committed now, bound to this creature by shared danger, mutual aid, and a growing, inarticulate affection. The journey home had begun. Navigating by the alien's bioluminescent map was unlike anything Cale had ever experienced. It wasn't just static data on a screen. The map on his NAV computer pulsed faintly, its symbols shifting and changing subtly, reflecting conditions or warnings that weren't picked up by his ship's standard sensors. The alien stayed in the cockpit with him during the deep space jumps, its presence a quiet comfort, its bioluminescence a steady source of light in the darkness. He learned that certain patterns of light indicated approaching phenomena. A swirling violet suggested gravitational anomalies, a flickering red and black warned of energy fields or hostile patrols. It was a constant, silent co-piloting, an intuitive guidance system that seemed to draw on a deeper understanding of the cosmos. They communicated mostly through gestures, the alien's tones, and the language of light. He would point to the map, ask a question with his eyes, and the alien would respond with shift in its glow, a resonant hum, or a series of clicks. He found himself anticipating its needs, understanding its intentions without the need for spoken words. Their physical closeness in the cockpit was a constant, understated intimacy. The small space, designed for one, felt less confined and more like a shared sanctuary. Their limbs would brush as they worked. Their shoulders touched during sharp maneuvers. Each contact sent a familiar jolt of sensory awareness through him, a heightened sense of the alien's vibrant, living presence. It was a silent conversation of touch and proximity, building a different kind of tension, one woven with curiosity and a growing, unspoken desire. The alien, too, seemed to be adapting to their shared space, its movements becoming more fluid, less contained than they had been in the cargo bay. Its bioluminescence often softened when they were simply sitting together during long jumps, settling into a warm, ambient glow that filled the cockpit with a gentle light. He found himself watching it, mesmerized by the play of light across its form, the intricate patterns that seemed to shift with its thoughts or emotions. One cycle, deep in an empty sector, they encountered an unexpected energy storm. The ship bucked violently, alarm screaming. Cale fought the controls, sweat beading on his forehead, his eyes scanning the chaotic sensor data. The alien was instantly alert, its bioluminescence flaring a frantic crimson and black. It reached out a glowing digit, touching the main control panel. A wave of energy pulsed from its touch, and the panel surged, the data feed stabilizing, showing him critical information he hadn't been able to access before. "What did you do?" he gasped, wrestling the ship back under control. The alien made a series of sharp clicks, its luminescence remaining agitated. It pointed to the storm outside, then to the control panel, then made a series of rapid hand, gestures that suggested complex calculations and system overrides. It hadn't just stabilized the panel. It had enhanced its capabilities, drawing on its own energy reserves to cut through the storm's interference. As the ship finally cleared the storm, Kale slumped back in his chair, exhausted but alive. He looked at the alien, its bioluminescence fading back to a deep, weary blue. Its form seemed slightly less vibrant, its energy reserves depleted. He felt a surge of gratitude, and something else, something protective and tender. "You saved us," he said, reaching out and gently touching its limb. "Thank you." The alien looked at his touch, then met his gaze. Its bioluminescence shifted, a soft, warm orange blooming within the blue. It didn't make a sound, but the expression in its multiple eyes, the subtle shift in its posture, conveyed a depth of sheer relief and something that felt undeniably like affection. In the aftermath of the storm, the boundaries between them felt thinner, the unspoken connection stronger. They had faced death together, relied entirely on each other, and emerged changed. The physical proximity, the shared danger, the alien's vulnerability after expending its energy, it had all woven together into a tapestry of deepening intimacy, a silent acknowledgement of the profound shift in their relationship. The mid-journey marker passed, and Kale found himself facing a different kind of challenge. The alien's map led them toward a heavily patrolled sector, one known to be controlled by the very corporation whose symbol the alien had drawn back on the station. He saw the warning signs on a scanner: automated drones, signal scramblers, interdiction fields. The alien's bioluminescence pulsed with growing anxiety, sharp, flickering crimson warning him of the danger ahead. He had to make a choice. Follow the map, risk encountering the corporation, and potentially losing the alien forever, or detour, find a safer route, potentially delaying their arrival home but ensuring its safety. The alien sensed his hesitation. Its bioluminescence softened to a pleading, urgent blue, and it made a series of rapid, melodic tones, tapping insistently on the NAV computer screen at the glowing point indicating its destination. It wanted to go home. It needed to go home. But Kale knew the risks. "It's too dangerous," he said, his voice tight. He pointed to the corporate symbols flashing on his scanner. "They're looking for you. If we go through there, they'll find us." The alien's bioluminescence flared crimson, sharp and angry again. It made a harsh, grating sound, the one he associated with its captors. It pointed to itself, then made a gesture being trapped again, then pointed to the map, to the destination point, its luminous form radiating a fierce, desperate longing. It was willing to face the danger to get home, but he wasn't willing to risk losing it. "No," Kale said firmly, shaking his head. "We'll find another way. A safer way." He started to input a detour route into the NAV computer. The alien reacted instantly. Its bioluminescence turned a cold, intense violet, a color he had never seen before, radiating an aura of something akin to shock and betrayal. It let out a sharp, piercing cry that vibrated through the cockpit, unlike any sound it had made before. Then, with a swift, unexpected movement, it struck the NAV computer with a glowing digit. A powerful surge of energy pulsed from its touch, overloading the device. The screen flickered violently, displaying garbled data before going dark. The alien retracted its digit, its form trembling slightly, its bioluminescence a chaotic swirl of agitated colors. It had destroyed the map, destroyed their only guide home. He stared at the dead screen, then at the alien, his heart sinking. The betrayal, the sudden violent act, was a physical blow. It didn't trust him. It saw his caution not as protection, but as a new form of captivity, a refusal to help it get home. "Why?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Why did you do that?" The alien didn't respond with sound or light patterns he understood. Its bioluminescence settled into a cold, distant blue, devoid of the warmth or emotion he'd come to recognize. It turned away from him, its form rigid, radiating an air of profound, silent hurt. The connection, the fragile trust they had built, shattered in an instant. He reached out a hand towards it, then stopped, the gesture feeling futile. The silence in the cockpit was deafening, filled with the weight of their broken bond and the looming threat of the corporate sector they were now blind navigating towards. He had tried to protect it, and in doing so had created the deepest rift between them yet. The journey home had just become immeasurably harder, and the alien, once his partner, now felt like a stranger again, wounded and distant. The tension in the cockpit was a physical weight, heavy and suffocating. The destroyed NAV computer lay on the console, a stark reminder of the alien's betrayal, and his own failure to understand its desperate need for home. They were flying blind now, relying on Kale's limited star charts and intuition, inching closer to the dangerous corporate sector with every passing moment. The alien remained silent, its bioluminescence a cool, unreadable blue, its form radiating a palpable sense of distance. He tried to talk to it, to explain his actions, his fear for its safety, but his words felt empty, unable to bridge the chasm that had opened between them. He pointed to the destroyed computer, made gestures of explanation, tried to convey that he still wanted to help it just safely. The alien would not meet his gaze, its silence more damning than any accusation. The physical closeness in the cockpit, once a source of quiet intimacy, now felt like an unbearable burden. He was intensely aware of its presence, of the space between them, of the silence that screamed louder than any sound. He needed to fix the NAV computer, needed the map back. He knew it was a long shot, the device clearly overloaded, but he had to try. He started gathering tools, working on the broken screen, the alien's silent presence a constant, heavy weight in the small space. As he worked, he felt a subtle shift in the air, a faint vibration that was distinct from the ship's hum. The alien was watching him. He didn't look up, concentrating on the delicate wiring. He heard a soft sound, a low hum, and a gentle warmth spread across his back. The alien's bioluminescence, a faint blue at the edge of his vision, seemed to brighten slightly. It wasn't touching him, but its presence felt closer, the distant aura lessening. He continued to work, not acknowledging the shift, unsure what it meant. After a while, the alien made a soft, resonant sound, the tone he associated with its name. He paused his work, looking up finally. The alien was still standing a few feet away, but its posture was different, less rigid, its form slightly softer. Its bioluminescence was still predominantly blue, but there were faint streaks of warmer colors, a hesitant mix of orange and yellow, like sunrise breaking through a cold sky. It extended a glowing digit, pointing not at the destroyed NAV computer, but at a small diagnostic port on the console he hadn't noticed before. He looked at the port, then back at the alien. It made a series of soft clicks, its gaze directed at the port. Was it suggesting connection? A different way to access the data? He hesitated. His own fear of betrayal, his hurt from its previous action, warred with a desperate need for the map and a hesitant hope offered by its changed demeanor. He looked at the port, then at the alien, trying to read the subtle shifts in its light, the expression in its eyes. It made the soft, resonant sound again, the one that felt like its name, a gentle, almost pleading tone. He took a deep breath. He had to trust it again. He pushed aside his fear, his hurt. He needed that map. And more than that, he needed to bridge the gap between them. He reached for a compatible cable, a data transfer line. He plugged one end into the diagnostic port. He held the other end out toward the alien. Its bioluminescence brightened significantly, the warm streaks of orange and yellow becoming more pronounced. It stepped closer, its movements fluid and graceful. It reached out its glowing digit and touched the end of the cable. A wave of intense bioluminescent energy pulsed from its touch, flowing down the cable and into the ship systems. Kale watched in awe as auxiliary screens flickered to life, displaying fragments of the map, sections of star charts, overlaid with unfamiliar symbols that pulsed with the alien's light. It wasn't just transferring data. It was integrating its own consciousness, its own understanding of the cosmos, directly into his ship's navigation system. The cockpit filled with a soft, warm light emanating from the console, from the alien's glowing form. He felt a mental presence brush against his own, not invasive or forceful, but a gentle, vast awareness of star systems and routes and dangers he couldn't comprehend. It was sharing its mind, its home, its journey with him, asking him to navigate it together. The act was one of profound trust, a silent apology, and a renewed plea for partnership. He met its gaze, his own eyes reflecting the light of its form. The silence between them was no longer heavy with tension, but filled with new understanding, a deeper connection forged in the crucible of conflict and vulnerability. They had hurt each other, but in the act of reaching out, of offering a second chance, they had found their way back to each other, the bond strengthened by the brief rupture. With the alien's consciousness integrated into the ship's navigation, the corporate sector felt less like an insurmountable barrier and more like a complex puzzle they could solve together. The console glowed with a constant living map, the alien's awareness guiding them through sense of blind spots, predicting patrol routes, and highlighting weak points in the interdiction fields. It was like having the stars themselves whispering directions in his ear, translated to the alien's luminous being. Their communication became a seamless blend of his verbal commands, his queries conveyed through thought and intent that the alien seemed to pluck directly from his mind, and the alien's responses woven into the shifting patterns of light on the console and the subtle resonances in the air. Physical intimacy deepened naturally in the state of shared awareness. Their proximity in the cockpit felt less about space and more about the merging of their beings. Their limbs would brush, their bodies touch, and the sensory jolt he felt was no longer just curiosity, but profound resonance, a vibration that seemed to align their very atoms. The alien's bioluminescence would flare with intensity during moments of high concentration or sheer relief, and in quieter moments, it would settle into a soft, warm glow that felt like a physical embrace. One night cycle. While navigating a particularly tricky energy field, Kale felt a familiar drain on the alien's energy. Its bioluminescence dimmed, its form becoming less vibrant. He reached out, touching its limb. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice soft with concern. The alien's glow flickered weakly, and it made a series of slow, tired tones. It needed to rest, to replenish its energy, but they were in a dangerous area, unable to stop. He looked at the glowing console, the intricate map pulsing with the alien's fading light. He needed its guidance. The alien seemed to sense his dilemma. It reached out a glowing digit, touching his hand. A faint warmth spread through him, a gentle pulse of energy. It wasn't just healing him this time. It was sharing its remaining strength, a desperate measure to keep their connection and their navigation alive. "No," Kale said quickly, pulling his hand away. "Don't. You need it." The alien's glow pulsed insistently, a silent refusal to let its connection falter. It made a series of pleading tones, its multiple eyes focused intently on him. It needed him to accept, to share the burden, to let their energies mingle. He hesitated for a moment, then relented. He reached out his hand again, grasping the alien's limb. Their contact was electric, not painful, but intensely stimulating. He felt a surge of energy flow from the alien, not like a jolt, but like warm liquid spreading through his veins. And he felt something else too, a deep, complex wave of emotion, alien yet familiar, a mixture of vulnerability, trust, and something that felt undeniably like love. The alien's bioluminescence brightened slightly as their connection deepened. Its glow intertwined with his own physical presence, the boundary between their beings blurring. The NAV console flared with renewed intensity, the map becoming sharper, clearer. They were navigating as one, their minds and bodies connected, a single entity guiding the ship to the treacherous void. The physical intimacy of the moment, the sharing of energy, the merging of consciousness, was more profound and sensual than anything he had ever experienced. It wasn't just about bodies. It was about the raw, exposed core of their beings touching, resonating, finding solace and strength in their shared vulnerability. In the heart of the corporate sector, surrounded by unseen threats, they found a refuge in each other, a bond forged in light, energy, and the deep, unspoken language of the soul. The organic forms that had approached were indeed the aliens' people. They were beings of light and energy, their forms fluid, adaptable, communicating through complex patterns of bioluminescence and resonant frequencies. Kale's ship was gently guided into a vast, glowing structure, a station perhaps, or a living city in the void. As they docked, he felt a sense of awe and trepidation. He was entering a world utterly alien, the home of the being he had come to care for so deeply. The alien, whose resonant tone he now associated indelibly with the feeling of its presence, moved with newfound grace and confidence in its home environment. Its bioluminescence pulsed with vibrant energy. Its form seemed to integrate seamlessly with the ambient light and hum of the living station. It communicated fluidly with its people. The air around him filled with a symphony of light and sound, a language he couldn't understand but could feel resonating within him. There was no hostility from the alien's people, only a profound, silent curiosity directed towards him. They observed him with their luminous eyes, their forms shifting subtly as they processed his presence. The alien stayed close to him, its bioluminescence a bridge between his human form and their alien world. It communicated his story, his role in its rescue, the journey they had shared. He couldn't understand the words, but he felt the weight of their exchange, the translation of his actions and his heart into their language of light and resonance. There was a moment, early on, when one of the elder-like organic forms approached him. It was larger, its bioluminescence more complex and ancient-looking. It reached out a tendril of light, touching his hand. Kale braced himself, unsure what to expect, but the touch was gentle, inquisitive. He felt a wave of probing energy, not invasive, but a silent, deep questioning that seemed to explore his memories, his intentions, the nature of the bond he shared with the alien. He didn't resist, opening himself to their silent inquiry. He thought of the fear he had felt, the moments of shared danger, the long hours working side by side, the silent language they had developed, the way the alien had healed him, guided him, shared its energy and its mind with him. He thought of the moment it had destroyed the NAV computer in its desperation for a home, the pain of the betrayal and the quiet act of trust that had mended their bond. He thought of the feel of its touch, the warmth of its bioluminescence, the connection that had rooted itself deep in his soul. When the elder form withdrew its light, its bioluminescence shifted, streaks of warm, golden light appearing within its ancient patterns, a sign of acceptance, of understanding. The alien beside him let out a soft, joyful sound, its own form erupting in a brilliant display of welcoming light. The elder form turned its luminous gaze toward the alien, and then towards Kale, and emitted a long, resonant tone, layered with complex harmonies. The alien translated through the silent language of light and touch, its form pulsing with emotion. They were offering him a place among them, a place in their world. It was an offer he hadn't dared to hope for. He looked at the alien beside him, at its beautiful, luminous form, the being who had turned his life upside down and shown him a universe he had never imagined. He reached out, taking its limb gently in his hand. Its bioluminescence pulsed warmly under his touch, a silent echo of his own beating heart. He didn't hesitate. "Yes," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Yes." The alien's form radiated pure joy in its multiple eyes, so alien yet so expressive, seemed to reflect the light of 1,000 stars. The journey had ended, but their story was just beginning, not in the cold void of space, but in the warm embrace of a world built on light energy and a love that transcended form and language. He was home, not because of the place, but because he was with the alien, his extraordinary companion, his unexpected love, in a universe where light and connection were the truest forms of existence. The future stretched before them, unknown but shared, a tapestry woven with the threads of their intertwined lives, illuminated by the perpetual, vibrant glow of their earned intimacy and the promise of a new beginning.